Hello and welcome to One Jamaica TV. My name is Joseph Patterson and our topic for today is election campaign financing fraud. Our goal today is to expose the system of electoral fraud being perpetrated by the PSOJ oligarchs and their colonial masters in collusion with their two colonial parties and the ECJ, which they both control and use to manipulate our elections in their favor. But first, please hit the subscribe button and help us to reach more intelligent persons like yourself. Then do me a big favor and like, share, and drop a comment to let us know what you think about this presentation. Now let's begin. Democratic elections in Jamaica are really just illusions to make us feel like we have a say in how our country is being run. But after 8 years of this game, we should all know by now that it's all just a big trick. You have heard that third parties cannot win, for example, but that is only true if we fail to understand the game and how we're being played and decide to do something about it. The truth is, money runs things, and those who control the money, and by extension the system, gets to decide who you get to see and hear from before, during, and after elections. A sunny thing said is a phrase that makes it clear that the system is designed for them to win and for we to lose. And as long as we play the game their way, the more we will lose. In this first episode of One Jamaica TV, we will pierce the veil of deception to reveal how the colonial masters and their middlemen at the PSOJ, the ECJ or the Electoral Commission of Jamaica, and their two colonial parties are skillfully plotting, legislating, and regulating to build a system of political monopoly where we are permanently stuck with their two parties. Their goal is to permanently control our government so that they are better able to defraud you of your time, your freedom, and your money in perpetuity. In short, they want to make wage slavery permanent. They're trying to lock down and lock out third parties to keep you voting for their two colonial parties because they own and control them and will always get whatever they want out of them. Voting for one or the other is a vote for the PSOJ oligarchs and their colonial masters. These two colonial parties are but a delusion of choice. And you have over 80 years of history or documented evidence of that irrefutable fact. Yes, the real winners of every election in this country are the colonial masters, or foreign masters as I call them sometimes, and the PSOJ oligarchs who bribe the two colonial parties with campaign funds, loans, and grants that we the people are then punished and made impoverished to pay back with a poor standard of living, loss of our lands, and tremendous struggle to secure some form of livelihood. Let's begin our analysis now of Jamaica's political system by starting with a simple question. What is campaign financing and how does it affect ordinary Jamaicans? Campaign financing is how political parties and candidates are funded to reach, attract, and convince voters. Under the current system, those with the most money are better equipped to contact, communicate with, and win voters. They are more visible, they are more available, and they look more attractive to voters because of the money. The more money a candidate has, the more they can campaign even before an election is called. Unlike in developed countries, most voters in Jamaica are economically challenged and thus can be bought with small handouts, giveaways, entertainment, and sponsorships instead of the message or the policies of those who seek their votes. This means the wealthy elites in a society like ours are better able to buy, own, and control politicians to then turn around and steal the wealth of the nation legally via our very government. A system in which the rich control the election of candidates with their money is not a democracy. It's a plutocracy. A plutocracy is where the rich controls the politics and the country. And the small group of elites, wealthy elites, who run this system in Jamaica behind the scenes are called oligarchs. They're part of the oligarchy. Just like in other countries, you might hear about the Russian oligarchs. Well, here in Jamaica, I call them the PSOJ oligarchs. Now, if you step back in history for a bit, in 1834, we were tricked with fake freedom, which the slaves were only free to choose their master. So instead of being trapped with one slave master, they were given fake freedom where their land and the wealth that was developed by extracting their labor for free were not returned to them, but they were given the freedom to just walk off the plantation. To do what? They have no money, they don't have any marketable skills generally, and what little they know, they would have to sell it back to one of the masters. And so they were only free to choose which of the slave masters they're going to work for pittance. So that was fake freedom. Real freedom would have been a return of their land to them, because land is power, land is capital. And that was not done. Even to this day, our political leaders have made it a duty of not returning the land to the people, because land is wealth, especially back then. And so in 1834, we were tricked with a fake freedom. Who did that? The colonial masters, the slave masters. In 1944, we were again tricked by the same colonial masters with a fake democracy. Yes, we were allowed to vote, but only for those who were approved by the plantocracy. The plantocracy are those who control the wealth and money. And so we were limited in our choices by those who they would fund to come forward. So again, that was really a trick. In 1962, we were tricked again with a fake independence that made sure we would develop as a dependent nation, dependent on grants and loans from the colonial powers. And they had these figureheads serving as our government, serving as our political leaders that they could easily manipulate. Today I will show you how they're trying to make permanent all of those tricks with a fraudulent system of election campaign financing.
We're now joined in studio by LeFranc Thompson, Registrar of Political Parties, Electoral Office of Jamaica, to discuss the new ECJ campaign finance reforms regulations. Thank you for your time and good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
I'm looking at all this and I've read it as I want to. And the one thing that stands out to me as a matter of curiosity is, instead of a matter of campaign reform in of itself, why not simply do away with campaign finance from outside individuals, period, and simply have it be a matter of funded by the state?
Campaign financing, it entails an aspect of private funding to candidates and political parties, wherein they may source contributions from outside of themselves, the entities. As well, the law allows for some degree of state funding to be offered to candidates and political parties, in that from the consolidated fund or the estimates of expenditure, usually there is an amount which is reserved for the reimbursement of election expenses which candidates may incur during an election. The idea is that state funding towards election is not usually recommended as a wholesale practice, in that you want to allow persons to source from permissible contributors toward public office that they seek to occupy. And state funding really is reserved for government planning, policy, and
no, I understand that concept in and of itself, but just to do away with the perception, if not the reality, of undue influence from outside.
From persons who fund elections.
Why not just go with a straight state funding? You get, each candidate gets X amount of dollars, you get X amount of time on public airwaves, and have it be done that way?
Well, perhaps that is something to be examined for the future. But currently the law allows that candidates and political parties may source private funding. And also there is reserve within the estimates of expenditure to accommodate reimbursement of election expenses.
Right. Well, where do we stand on adherence to campaign finance within the parties?
Well, we can speak of the recent Portland Eastern by-elections, which were the first test of the election campaign financing regulations. Both political parties can be reported as being compliant with what the law requires. They submitted their returns on time, and the commission was able to examine these submissions and to see that aspects such as supporting details and the different disclosures which are required in law have been submitted to the office.
Where do we stand on the matter of in-kind contributions?
Contributions in kind are also counted as donations, and once they are of value $10,000 or more, up to $249,000, they are supposed to be recorded in terms of invoices, bills, or receipts that denote what service was provided to the political party or candidate. Above $249,000, we go into the realm of what is a contribution. $250,000 or more constitutes a contribution that must be declared by the contributor and disclosed within the return of election expenses by the candidate and also the campaign period expenditure report of political parties. These contributions, whilst being declared by the contributor, must also be accompanied by receipts for making of these contributions from the political party or candidate. And this too is part of the examination by the commission to see that contributions are declared and also the requisite receipts are issued by the political parties and candidates.
So here's an hypothetical. Say I'm a graphic artist.
Yes?
I decide to make a poster for a candidate. On the open market, this would cost $15,000. I bill it at $5,000. Because now we're looking at, there's a lot of nebulous intricacies involved in this. Because if I'm driving you from point A to point B, if it's a private car and I hire, say, a limousine, it's going to cost me X. And if I just go by regular bus, it's going to cost me Y. If I have a taxi.
So the suggestion there is that persons may manipulate costs and declarations. Indeed, we perceive that that is the case, that is a possibility. But we can only look at what ought to be, and we recommend that persons are truthful in their declarations, and anything that is of market value, $10,000 or more, ought to be reflected in your disclosures to the commission. It is that these declarations will be subject to auditing and investigation by the commission, and anyone who is found to have made a false declaration or has not disclosed disclose contributions as is required under the law, then they are subject to certain penalties and fines that are listed in the law. For non-disclosure, they stand to be fined up to $1 million or face a term of imprisonment for 12 months. Or if there is a case of false declaration, the applicable fine there is up to $3 million and or
what are the mechanisms do we currently have in place to ensure adherence to the law?
The commission will seek to work with the series of auditors and investigators who will be assigned to the organization to investigate any forms of non-compliance or breaches of the law. Also, we have capacity, the ability to call upon other anti-corruption agencies, and we can think of the Integrity Commission, if I might mention them. We can verify contracts being listed with the National Contracts Commission, and these are the mechanisms for verifying or investigating, querying submissions which are sent into the office in order to declare parties and candidates compliant with the law.
Now let us take a closer look at their campaign financing trickery. New rules were designed and brought into place for the last election and will continue forward with more development. These new rules were designed to confuse, distract, and marginalize while legalizing the theft of your tax dollars to fund the permanent elimination of third parties. Of course, I've said a mouthful, so I need to explain this. Here's how they're doing it. The two colonial parties for nearly 80 years operated without registration or campaign financing legislations. But in 2018, they made it mandatory for parties to register and have their activities and finances monitored by their Electoral Commission of Jamaica, which is really a body that is controlled exclusively by the two colonial parties. So it's not a real electoral commission for the benefit of Jamaicans. This trick was designed to eliminate third-party opponents, which they knew would lack the funding to meet their onerous registration and regulatory requirements. It worked initially until the UIC, under my leadership, decided to challenge them. And after nearly a year of pushback by the ECJ, we prevailed and became Jamaica's official third registered political party on December 2nd, 2019. They still have another card to play, however. This card will likely eliminate all third parties for good, with campaign financing regulations which are designed to pack more excessive regulations on such parties while providing the two colonial parties with tax funding to give them a permanent financial advantage. With 80 years of organizational experience, massive PSOJ oligarchy funding, paid staff and offices, the two colonial parties have no problem meeting and even manipulating the campaign financial regulations, while third parties buckle under the pressure. The new trick called campaign financing regulations will see the two colonial parties getting up to 40% of their campaign funds from the taxes we pay. Do you see the trick? Here's how they've structured it. Each party may spend $630 million on campaigning. That's $10 million per candidate, or $1.26 billion between the two colonial parties. Yes, that's how much they're going to spend at the party level to win the next election. Each candidate can spend $15 million of their own fundraising monies or from their pockets. That's another $945 million in total for the 126 candidates of these two colonial parties. Combining the spend of these two colonial parties and their candidates, the legal maximum spending during the so-called campaign period will be approximately $2.205 billion to win your votes, to get control of your government. This does not include what they would have spent on campaigning before the Prime Minister announces the election date and kicks off what they call the campaign period. So the monies I just told you about is what they're allowed to spend within the campaign period, from the date the Prime Minister announces to the day before the physical election. They can spend $2.05 billion. But before that, they can spend a ton load of money unrestricted to prepare for the elections and even to prepay some of the cost of the elections, which will allow them to exceed this $2.05 billion spend. This does not include what the party in power spends from your tax coffers to campaign while pretending to be doing the work of government. I hope you understand that. So apart from the $2.205 billion, and apart from what they will spend outside of the campaign period, the party in power in government also gets to use your taxes to campaign to you while they're in office, pretending to be doing real government work. This does not include the next $2+ billion that the ECJ will spend to host the elections itself. This means elections will cost us, one way or another, over $5 to $10 billion to produce what? An unsafe, unclean, and disorderly country where most of us are poor or financially insecure and wish to migrate as soon as possible. Who is investing this much money in these two parties and why? The PSOJ oligarchs. It's an investment on which they expect and will reap a very handsome return. They're not investing this money for fun. They're not just giving away this money for our democracy. This is an investment by the private sector organization, oligarchs, the rich elites, the biggest companies in this country, investing over $31 million each in each of the parties. You're talking about $63 million each of them put in at a minimum. Plus, they can give $15 million to the candidates on top of it. Now, what influence will this give them over the government? Next to their colonial masters, the PSOJ oligarchs have nearly 100% influence over the government. They own the politicians who makes up the government. Therefore, they own the government. The current laws and regulations are merely there to make us feel good and think something is being done to clean up government. But the law is only designed to allow them to come down hard on struggling third parties while creating a political monopoly for the two colonial parties. The colonial parties already had a lock on big donors and as such will have no problem under the new laws that their colonial masters instructed our politicians to implement. The real goal of all of this is to cement their monopoly over our government by creating compliance hurdles for small, underfunded third parties such as the OIC.
East Portland by-election, the Electoral Commission of Jamaica issued a reminder that candidates for parliamentary elections are now required to declare the source of their funding. So we've invited a couple of folks from the ECJ to expound on that. Director of Legal Affairs, Colleen Wallen, and Registrar of Political Parties,
LaFron Thompson.
LaFron, may I go start with you because I never even know there was a registrar of political parties. What does that mean?
What do you do?
Well, the registrar is the officer who is in charge of the registration of political parties and also the person designated to give monitor of election campaign financing, the reporting of such by political parties, and the outline of spending within an election.
Okay, why does the ECJ require candidates to declare their funding sources? Ladies?
Well, the Representation of the People Act, Amendment Act of 2016, makes it mandatory that election campaign expenses be reported. It is that the law intends to give regulation to campaign financing and also to monitor what are the sources of funding going into election campaigns. Another benefit too is that it really creates transparency and it gives members of the society view or see of those persons who are influencers of the democratic process.
All right.
Okay.
Now, this will be the first time in Jamaica that the candidates would have to, and ahead of the by-election now, the by-election is when? April 4. Let's look at this. Have the parties declared their source of funding as yet? Legal officer?
Before we get to the declaration, there are
Yes.
several steps that must be complied with.
Yes, share that with
So
us.
it is important for us to understand what contributes or what is a contribution. Now, that is any gift, loans, or any benefit that can be computed in terms of money that is given to a political party or a candidate for the purposes of carrying out their political activities or for the election of a candidate.
So if me give him a dozen chicken to go give away, or me give Miss Vaz a dozen goat,
It is a contribution.
it's a contribution. All right.
Okay, and the
What's mo-
maximum
That's what I was going to
contribution
ask. Yeah.
for a candidate per contributor is $1.5 million, and for the political party, it's $31.5 million.
How much?
$31.5 million
Per person?
per person.
Oh, so you can give to the party 30 million. Meaning, I'm saying, what do you mean? So-
Clarify.
Yeah.
You may
clarify.
give to the party $31.5 million in total.
Right.
However, if you should be funding a candidate,
Right, it's
as
one-
well as a party, you should not exceed $31.5 million.
Because they have a budget, so each candidate is allowed up to $15 million to spend on campaign.
Really?
Yes, and the political party has up to $630 million.
Why put a cap on it? Oh, so it's fair, I guess, across all. I mean, who decides on these figures? It's in law.
It's the law.
It's passed.
I
as
guess
law.
it's then to ensure that there's equity, and
Equity,
also
yeah.
that we don't get crazy and spend off all this money campaigning, and then when the
Perhaps,
election
yes.
done,
You lose,
none
yeah.
left to the people. Them,
When
in the
election done, you
constitu-
lose.
Yeah.
And money gone down the drain. No.
Who can make? Sorry, my love.
Yeah.
Who can make a contribution? Are there limits as to who and who are?
Right.
You know, will be
There
able to-
are persons who may contribute are private individuals, companies, entities, or persons within the Jamaican diaspora group. A political party may also fund its candidate. There is a standard of impermissible contributors, and this will include any foreign government, the agent of a foreign government, a public body, or any entity who wishes to be undisclosed, or if their activities are illegal, they are not allowed to make contributions to the campaign process.
No,
and
we
there are
see-
government entities as well.
Government
Public
entities
bodies.
can't. No, public bodies can't.
Okay.
However, we see in the current campaigning of the two parties for East Portland, you see Damion Crawford has a crowdfunding.
Okay.
Now, where does the law sit with public campaigning on a platform like that? Because you're getting sources. I mean, did you have to declare, for example, I'm just putting it out there as a shareholder, you know, holding this conversation right now. I want to know, can you take the money on crowdfunding, or do you have to now declare who contributed on that platform, for example,
If he
for
doesn't
transparency?
get more than $250,000 from a contributor,
Jamaican?
yeah.
Okay.
There's no need for a declaration.
Okay,
So there's
okay.
a cap.
Okay.
So any contributor who makes $250,000 or more, they
That's
are
when you can
required
declare.
to make a
Okay.
declaration.
It should be good.
All right. How is the declaration done?
Yeah.
Declarations are done within prescribed forms, and these are listed to the ECJ's website. In fulfilling the requirements under the law, the candidate is responsible for submitting these declarations within 6 weeks of an election, and declarations are to be supplemented with the vouchers or receipts that he would have gained from contributors.
He or
who-
she.
He or she, yes.
You know, equity.
He or she gained from contributors of value $10,000 or more.
Yeah.
Where a contributor does not provide a voucher or an invoice, then a candidate is expected to issue a statement of receipt for
Right.
any value that he would have gained during a campaign period.
Okay.
For contributions of $250,000 or more, what is to be issued is a receipt of contribution, and this is Form 5 within the different forms that are listed. Form 6, rather, that is supposed to be submitted to the commission.
Hold on, slow down, Register. How many forms are there?
There are many forms.
People out there campaigning, so they have time to sit down and say, how
Well-
many, you read 6, how many are we going to?
Altogether in the regulations,
Yes.
there are 10 forms.
Wow, okay.
10 forms. And a candidate will have a number of forms within which they have to fulfill their obligations under the law.
What's the time frame? So the election's April 4. Do I have to declare a week, a month, 2 days?
6 weeks.
6 weeks
But
before?
there's 6 weeks. There's
No,
no
6
weeks.
weeks after
Oh,
the
that
election.
after the election you
Yeah,
declare.
you have the campaign period,
Right.
which starts on the day when the Prime Minister makes the announcement, and it
Right.
ends 24 hours before the calling of the election. The reporting period starts also on the day when the announcement is made for the election and continues up to 181 days after.
Then suppose after me when you find a problem with the money,
You
what
can't
happen?
take back my seat. Can you?
Well, after you've won,
Well,
there-
it
if
is
there's a
subject to
problem-
scrutiny.
Okay.
And then you will have to come before the commission
Right.
and make a declaration.
But you can't take back my seat.
I think at this
Not
point,
the
too,
seat.
I'm just saying. If you like, okay, we have to answer. And we sit
But there
before the
are
commission.
penalties where
Ah.
breaches have occurred.
yeah.
So for non-disclosure, you can be fined up to $1 million. Where it is that someone has made a false declaration, they can be fined up to $3 million on summary conviction in the RM courts. And in default of making that payment, a prison time not exceeding 12 months. So
Right.
there are consequences.
But you don't take back the seat.
No.
well, I can't remember. A candidate too is expected to make a declaration that contributions are permissible. And if it is that he would have done so falsely, then he would have contravened the law, and then he would be subject to conviction.
No anonymous donations.
Yes.
You need to know where your money is coming from. All right, candidates. Now, next question, ladies. Campaigning within this law. When does campaigning start and end? So you can campaign for years before, can you?
No,
I mean,
the act is specific. Campaign period starts on the day for the purposes of a by-election.
But that-
On the day when the PM makes the announcement, and it expires 24 hours before the opening.
I
of
think
the
what
polls.
Empress is saying is that I could, in my mind, say I'm going to run for Member of Parliament for Television Jamaica next year.
That you go for?
But me start from now, and I start meeting people, and so technically campaigning has started. But are you saying under this law I don't need to declare
Until six.
Until-
Until there
the
has been an
official date.
official
Until the
declaration.
official
That's why I'm
date.
going to
It
vote
is
for
a
you, know.
loophole.
For MP. So,
I understand the law, but I think some
There are some gray
adjustments
areas.
need to be made.
Like what?
Because if I know that I can campaign ahead of the actual time, then I go and take the bulk of the money that I go and get from people and start campaign and in the pre-campaign.
But what does campaigning mean? This is my thing. So I decide that I'm going to work in a community, right? Like what we do in a Jamaica. What you do? We go place, we are work
campaign
and campaign. You might even
is
wear your green and orange
geared
shirt.
towards election activities.
Right. So they're
Right?
saying tied
So
into-
within a
it's when the
period
official
of-
It's a date.
election time starts.
yeah.
Isn't that what you're saying?
Right,
But
yes.
I don't
So
know
I'm
what
saying-
you're
but
saying is
I'm
what-
saying that outside of the official time,
that you can spend
if
all this
I have
money
been
before.
in there for 2 years spending money towards becoming MP,
Right.
I should also
It
be
no come.
made to
No,
to
it can't, because you can't say me I spend my money in my constituency where me live.
Me want to
or
know
where
say
me
your
want-
money you
where me
spend,
want
though.
work. It don't matter because campaign the election hasn't been
No,
called.
but it's a loophole if me smart.
But every law have loophole. That's why you have lawyer.
Would I spend most of my
Every law has loophole.
Well, I say, if you not give me the money, give me before the by-election time. The Electoral
Ladies.
Commission ladies must say, so what is pandemic on this?
I know this a morning.
No, but ladies, you were very, thank you very much because you
Yeah.
clarified some
Definitely.
some things that were necessary and also necessary for contributors to know
Right.
that when they're giving, these are the things that are in place to protect them, which is very important.
Thank
Anything
you
else
for
you want to
having
say
us.
before you go?
Contributors, where they need to declare contributions in excess of $250,000,
Yes.
and also where they hold contracts for up to a period of 2 years prior to making a contribution, they will have to disclose such to the commission.
If the
And
contract is
if after
500,000.
making a contribution, they gain a contract up to 2 years after, and that is valued at 500,000 or more, then they
Speak.
must disclose it
Amen.
to the commission.
I agree
Well,
with
there
you.
you go.
I
So
agree
if
with you.
I give Delia 250,000,
And then me, I go hire you and give you back $1 million.
well, you know, Links. Link it. Does the public have to know? Is there any kind of privacy? Because, for example, a lot of looking at the political atmosphere in Jamaica, so I may not want anybody to know that I actually gave Daily the 250. The public. I don't mind you knowing. Electoral Commission of Jamaica may know. I don't have a problem with that. But what if I don't want, because of the political atmosphere?
I don't want her to know.
Well,
I don't want.
The Commission has a responsibility to disclose all contributions above $1 million.
Oh, above $1 million?
Yes.
So my 250, look, money there. The one.
Unless it further comes into disrepute.
Right.
The public doesn't have to know that 250 came from me.
Currently, the law does not stipulate with regard to $250,000, but it specifies above $1 million, then the Commission will have to
So I'm only giving you
such.
$999,999.
Okay, ma'am. You see,
And I don't have
break rules.
Well, she would still be compliant.
Yes, I'm very compliant.
Oh,
yes.
Lord.
Ladies, thank you for sharing that.
The new rules will use our tax dollars to fund up to 40% of the campaign expenditures of the two colonial parties and their candidates. This is a massive trick to force taxpayers into paying for their own enslavement, and it will reduce the amount the PSOJ oligarchs have to shell out to their own two colonial parties. So they have figured out a very smart way to trick us, to exploit us, and to get us to pay for it. However, the new law leaves the window wide open for the PSOJ oligarchs to step in at any time to fill the financial gap of their two colonial parties if the need should ever arise. So this new financing arrangement does not stop them from contributing billions to these two parties, but it also gives them a reprieve in that the two parties can take 40% of their campaign funding from your tax coffers. Allocating public funds to political parties and candidates based on the votes received in the last election, if they get more than 5%, ensures the two colonial parties will always be more financially endowed than any third party. Just think about it. If the funding rule is that you can give up to 40% of whatever a party spends or a candidate spends, provided they got more than 5% of the votes, you're really saying that the establishment, the entrenched parties, are going to hit the ground running in that after the first election, they would have had the percentage in place to get the lion's share. And so it was. In the 2020 election, only two parties contested that fraudulent election, which was called in the middle of a pandemic, when the Prime Minister told us that it was too dangerous for us to go outside, too dangerous for us to congregate, but he still called an election 9 months earlier than necessary. And he won that election in a landslide. But it was only two of them who contested it. The UIC did not contest that election because it was unfair, it was irresponsible, given the facts or what they told us were the facts. And it was unconscionable for the Prime Minister to call such an election. So we abstained from it. But what it means and what it meant is that based on these new laws which they put in place, they would be entitled to 40% refund of what they spent on that election. So if they spent $1 billion, they would be able to get back $400 million each from this, based on how much they spent. Okay? So 95 to 100% of public funds will always go to them after every election using this fraudulent formula. You see the trick? So they've already started out with a massive funding. And you can just imagine every future election, they're starting from the base of the previous election. So what was the previous election? In the 2020 election, they got 100% of the votes casted. So they will get 100% of the possible refund that they can get. And that will be 40% of what they spent. So they've already started this coming campaign with a big leg up over any competitor. And remember, they still have the PSOJ funding, which they were getting prior. While third parties have no funding from the PSOJ oligarchs because those oligarchs are not interested in third parties. They already have the thing locked up with these two. The UIC system of a 100% public funding to all and every candidate and only the candidates is the best way to go. The UIC system of a 100% public funding to only candidates and to every candidate equally would not only save us billions in unproductive spending, it would also attract better quality candidates, eliminate the control of the colonial masters and the PSOJ oligarchs that they have over our government, and would ensure a truly free and fair electoral system. Now, the UIC's response to what they have now codified in law, and we recently went to a meeting with some consultants they brought in, some white people they brought in, claiming to be Commonwealth consultants who were sponsored by the UN. And we had a serious meeting with them. They tried to cap it at 1 hour and all of that. And I went there and I clearly laid out for them that what they're proposing, what they have put into law, and what they're trying to make stronger is an affront to the Jamaican people and will not improve our system but make it worse. And so I explained that to them in no uncertain term. Of course, they weren't happy.
In terms of further cooperation with the Electoral Commission, do you think that it would be in the interest of your political party to have more a kind of like working relationship with the Electoral Commission, have guidance, maybe trainings to be prepared for the next general elections, which could happen in 2025 or maybe 2026. Do you think that as a newly registered political party, there's a need for you to be better prepared and trained by the Electoral Commission to just to be a bit more familiar with the regulations and just to have a better chance to comply with campaign finance regulations?
Is that for me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I thought Mr. Campbell was going to speak. We are very au fait with the regulations as they now exist. We do not subscribe to them. We think that they're very weak regulations that continue the process that exists. What would be very useful is for us to look at alternatives, which we're doing here in a very short period of time. Mr. Gilbert pointed out the obvious flaws in the existing system if we're going to try to pursue that. It's obvious that people can manipulate the so-called campaign period versus the non-campaign period. It's obvious that the existing party can manipulate the election calling date. It's obvious that the Electoral Commission is not in a position to fully vet and audit all of the campaign financing sources. It's obvious that in previous elections, recent elections, we've seen where candidates indicate that they spent $0 on their campaign, that everything was spent by their parties, and there were some anomalies in that, and to be able to figure that out. So the challenges are great and significant. And what we've done as a UIC is to carefully analyze elections over the last 80 years, and it's very clear that the best approach is one that is 100% publicly funded, that eliminates funding from all external sources, illicit or otherwise, one which ensures that all candidates are treated equally and equitably and fairly, and will give Jamaican people truly free and fair elections.
You're breaking up.
if that's what we want. So if we want truly free and fair election, our goal must be to get to the root of the problem. And the root of the problem is those who have the most money decides which candidates are heard. And if you want real democracy, you have to make sure that those candidates who are ill-equipped financially are able to be heard. And those candidates who are well-equipped financially are not given an outsized advantage. And so what we've done is taken the time to carefully evaluate the situation. And I've listed for you here in the comment section, a summary view of what we're proposing. And so if the Commission and if Jamaica and if the world is interested in real governance, good governance, then this is a model that will certainly achieve that by eliminating big money, illicit money, and giving all candidates equal opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah, but just bear in mind though that so what the proposal is basically asking for the act to be re-looked at, to be amended. What we want is there exists an act. The consultation is how to make it effective in terms of what's required on it. We know that in terms of their concern in terms of some potential change. But that will have to come through the
I understand, Mr. Brown. So I understand. So if we were to look at the Act in its current form, what would we propose as changes to the Act? Our position is the Act in its current form is fundamentally flawed, is substantively flawed, and does not address the problem that you seek to address. I mean, what you're trying to do, is to ensure fairness and equity in the electoral process. If that is the objective, this Act does not achieve that. This Act is really what you call a facade on a real problem. So the Act will give us the feeling that we're doing something. But in reality, anybody who knows, in fact, recently, on the PNP administration, Darrell Vaz stood up in Parliament and pointed out the flaws in this Act. He showed clearly how a politician can raise a lot of money before the electoral period, spend that money in advance, buy the armbands, buy the t-shirts, buy the caps, prepay for so many things. He can prepay the full, if he wanted to and could, he could prepay the full 15 or 10 or 20 or $30 million in advance of the election. And then during the election, still spend the additional 15 million as a candidate and the additional $10 million as a party and so on and so forth. So that the Act, while it is a nice sounding and encouraging piece of document that could lull the society into a sense of false security, it is a failing Act that will fail the people and continue to perpetuate the very thing that we claim we want to fix. If we're serious about this, let us go back to the government, to the two parties that have controlled this country for 8 years and say, this Act, this law, this regulation is wrong, it will not solve the problem, and the UIC as a solution that will really get to the bottom of the problem and give the Jamaican people true and real democracy. Let me say this. Systems must be designed to bring out the best, not the worst in us. The current system is designed to attract bad people and repel good people out of politics. If you notice, most good people don't want to get involved in politics. It's mostly bad people who do, and that's why we have such a bad view of politicians. The UIC system will shift the focus of the electoral system from who can raise the most money to who has the best capacity, the best ideas, and the best character to lead and represent us. The current system claims to be about free and fair elections, but is designed to ensure unfair and unfree elections by creating a plutocracy and facilitating an oligarchy. The UIC system will ensure we have a free and fair electoral system by replacing controlled partisan politicians with unbought independent representatives. It is important to know that most of our laws and regulations come from our colonial past, from external forces. or from the PSOJ elites. They're not designed to uplift the majority, but to exploit them to benefit a few, the minority. This is how the master-slave economic model has always worked and will always work until we change it. If we want free and fair elections, we must ensure equal opportunity for all candidates. We must ensure equity in the system for all candidates. We must ensure transparency in the process of becoming and being a candidate, not just in the act of voting and counting ballots. The UIC system achieves this by funding every candidate who qualifies and by funding them equally. That's why I love the UIC as a movement and as a political party. The best way to ensure equality, equity, and transparency in elections is to have a 100% publicly funded system of campaign financing that funds every candidate equally from our taxes and excludes private money from the process. This 100% publicly funded campaign financing system ensures every candidate has equal opportunity to communicate with their constituents. Those with access to big money would no longer have an insurmountable financial advantage over those without. This would level the playing field significantly. This 100% publicly funded system is designed to make it easy for the best among us to put their names forward as candidates because they have a more realistic chance of being heard under our system. Let me recap it for you how the UIC system really works. I've done presentations on this before, but let me kind of summarize it in, say, 7 or 8 steps. On the UIC system of campaign financing, there shall be no private funding of political campaigns for either parties or candidates. So the parties can't get private funding, the candidates can't get private funding. All who qualify to be candidates shall be 100% publicly funded equally to eliminate vote buying, bribery, kickbacks, big money, and bad money from the electoral process. You see how clean that is? If we fund every candidate publicly, every candidate gets tax funding to compete, the same amount for every candidate, so to speak. You eliminate the vote buying because they have no money to go buy votes. You eliminate bribery, kickbacks, big money, and bad money. Number 3, all candidates shall be publicly funded primarily in kind, not with cash, but in kind, by the state providing them equal access to newspaper to get their message out, equal access to radio, equal access to television, equal access to internet, equal access to town halls, equal access to public debates. So, newspaper, radio, television, internet, town halls, and public debates. And any other basic support a candidate may need, such as transportation or accessories. Whatever is required, so that all of them are on equal footing with each other financially. To qualify as a candidate to access this public funding, one must be a Jamaican citizen of the requisite age who, by way of a good governance standardized test, demonstrates an appropriate level of knowledge and understanding of the political process and government and of 5 or more years of valid or validated progressive experience in 1 or more senior leadership and management roles. The top 3 applicants in any given constituency with a passing score shall be allowed on the ballot. Number 5, the fact-checked statements, policies, and plans, together with the full resume, bio, and manifesto of each candidate shall be posted for easy access, comparison, and viewing online and in public spaces for their respective constituents to see. It would then be illegal for any candidate to solicit or receive donations of any kind towards their campaign from anyone. Both the donor and the recipient of any such donations or contributions shall be fined 10 times the amount and serve a day in jail for every $1,000 in question. Both shall be barred from seeking public office if found guilty in a court of law. Number 7, every aspect of the qualification and funding process should be audited in real time and conducted in as public and transparent a manner as possible to ensure no one is unfairly treated or prevented from fully participating in the electoral process. Testing must be public and the results posted in real time and audited the same day. Finally, all candidates must be communicated with simultaneously via the same channels, and every complaint or abnormalities investigated and resolved prior to the declaration of any winner of any given election. The entire process must in fact be free and fair and free from fear, bias, or inequity as defined in the regulations. Do you see the beautiful structure here that the OIC has laid out for us? And if we would only embrace that and make that become our law, almost all of the problems we have with elections will disappear. Now, we did not develop this system in isolation, however. Yes, it can stand on its own, but it is meant to be part of a non-partisan constitutional republic of Jamaica, a new model of governance that is designed to bring out the best in all of us by uniting, liberating, and empowering us to achieve our full potential as individuals and as a collective. This 100% publicly funded campaign financing solution will help to unite us by attracting better persons to lead us. It will liberate us from those who are in politics for illicit enrichment. And it will empower us by transforming our government from a colonial system of bad governance into an effective system of good governance. The existing laws and regulations, in fact, the entire colonial constitution that we're under, needs to be replaced with a new and truly Jamaican constitution, one that is designed to give us a safe, clean, and orderly republic that fully protects the life, the liberty, and property rights of all Jamaicans equally. This, and only this, will give us a Jamaica where everyone can live, earn, and retire with dignity. I now want to give you a call to action. The call to action is to help me get elected in Northeast St. Elizabeth, to give you a voice in Parliament, and to enable the UIC platform to bring about this real transformation. It is not enough for us to have a system of one man, one vote and call that democracy. We need a system of equal opportunity, equity, and transparency in the area of candidacy as well. If you can only get to see and hear from those controlled by the elites, that is not democracy. That is a plutocracy. That's a country run by an oligarchy. After 80 years of two colonial parties, all we have is a colonial system and the PSOJ oligarchy promoting and protecting a fake democracy. This is why we need a new system and a new leadership for a new Jamaica. We the people must fund and own our political party, which is the UIC. If we don't, the colonial powers and the PSOJ oligarchs will continue to fund and own their two colonial parties, which are the GLP and the PNP. And they will continue to use them to own and control us to our detriment. In fact, in the end, they're going to get us to fund our own enslavement by taxing us to fund their monopoly over our political system. This is the epitome of using force and fraud to get their way. The force is taxation, and the fraud is their cunning regulations. With the UIC's 100% publicly funded system of campaign financing, we not only level the playing field for all candidates and eliminate big money and bad money from the process, we also reduce the cost of campaigning while increasing the quality and the usefulness of campaigning. We will also reduce the negative impact on our national productivity of their unhealthy kind of election campaigns. We will also reduce the internal scamming in our government, where people inside the very government seek ways to steal our tax dollars to add to their election campaign coffers. If the wealthy elites or those with bad intentions cannot buy our politicians anymore, our politicians will be forced to work for us and only us because we fund them and therefore we own them. And that kind of system we want. The UIC's 100% publicly funded campaign financing system will shift the tone and make the whole process more civil and informative and substantive, as candidates are forced to focus on policy instead of vote buying popularity. This 100% publicly funded system of campaign financing includes monitoring the income, the expenses, the assets and liabilities of every elected politician. We will lock them up and seize their assets if any of it cannot be explained and shown to be legitimate and not illicit enrichment. We will also fine the candidates and the donors 10 times the amount of any illegal spending and contribution, plus 1 day in jail at hard labor for every $1,000 of illegal funding or spending. This is how we clean up politics, my friend. This is how we get good governance. I need you to volunteer and donate to help me win my seat in Northeast St. Elizabeth and begin the process via Parliament toward this good governance agenda I have outlined to you. Jamaica is presently a democratic dictatorship where the people are allowed to vote for the options placed before them by the colonial masters and the PSOJ oligarchs who fund and control these two colonial parties. It's time for us to wake up and see that and understand it. We need to understand this system and mash it up. Mash up their monopoly and take back our country. We need less government, less taxes, and less regulations over our lives. We're suffocating. They're draining the lifeblood out of us as a people. We need more safety, a more clean and beautiful country, a more orderly society, a more free and fair market economy, so that we each can attain our full capacity and realize true prosperity. We cannot continue to depend on two known organized criminal entities to stop the cycle of criminality plaguing our society. We cannot continue to depend on two professional scammers to stop our people turning to scamming as more rewarding than honest working. We cannot continue to believe the authors of corruption that they will lead us into the promise of a corruption-free land. It's time for us to wake up and smell the fact that under them, the coffee, the cocoa, the banana, our railway, airports, airlines are all gone. Our public servants and our public transportation systems are gone to the dogs. Sugar is wiped out. Every major industry controlled by us has been wiped out. After 80 years of these two colonial parties, the whole country is becoming a nation of have-nots. with a few rich people and whole heap of outsiders owning our government, owning our economy, and owning our lands. Even our beaches are being taken away from us. Give me your support, and let's make Jamaica safe again. Let's make Jamaica nice again. Let's make Jamaica sweet again. We can do it. We must do it. We will do it. And I'm here to lead the process to help us do it. I hope you will give me your full and unequivocal support by joining my campaign team, volunteering, donating, and helping to elect me as the next MP for North East St. Elizabeth, and eventually your Prime Minister and your first President of the non-partisan Constitutional Republic of Jamaica. Thank you. Welcome to One Jamaica TV. This is the place of choice for all who love this country and want to see the nation succeed.